Bienvenue. Welcome to the EMSB's ParentCon 2023 Lunch and Learn series. My name is Marika Ramundo, and I'm a parent volunteer on the EMSB Parents Committee. The purpose of this virtual Lunch and Learn series is to provide you with some valuable information, tips, and strategies to help you navigate the joys and challenges of parenting. We appreciate the time you've set aside to be here with us. So grab a cup of coffee or your favorite lunch and settle in for what promises to be an informative and enjoyable session. Today's session is designed to help parents and caregivers navigate the complex and often sensitive topic of sexuality education with their children. The presentation aims to provide practical advice and strategies for talking about sexuality in age and developmentally appropriate ways in conjunction with the MEQ Sexuality Education content. It will also emphasize the importance of having open communication and honest dialogue between parents and/or caregivers and their children. Jamie Quinn is our speaker today, and she is the Sexuality Education Consultant at the English Montreal School Board. Since 2002, Jamie has been working for the EMSB. For the first part of her career at LaurenHill Academy, she was very involved in the learning community, teaching multiple subjects, coaching sports teams, and training students at the campus store, where they learned life skills and how to work as a team. While being immersed in the school culture, Jamie encouraged her students to be inclusive and accept all people for who they are. Sexuality can always be a topic of conversation, as her students and classroom had an open door policy where students came to ask questions, discuss personal matters, or wanted simply to feel welcome in a place that felt safe. Since 2018, Jamie continues to support all schools, staff, administration, and students in the EMSB with the implementation of the MEQ Sexuality Education content. She has confidence in the partnerships and continues to encourage, maintain, and support schools to create healthy and inclusive environments for all students. Take it away, Jamie.
Hello and welcome to Raising Confident and Informed Kids, a presentation about talking to your child about sexuality. Now, before you click end and leave, I said sexuality, but I know your adult brain went immediately to those first three letters, sex. So you thought this presentation was going to discuss about intercourse and kids. That may be an important topic for some, and sex is part of sexuality. However, it will not be the main focus of this webinar. So you can take your finger off the end button. This session will be about talking to your kids about sexuality. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Jamie Quinn. First, I'm a mom of a preteen and teen, a wife of my partner, and I studied to be a teacher where I taught at LaurenHill Academy for 17 years. Today, I am the Sexuality Education Consultant for the EMSB. I've been in this position for the past 5 years. And my role is to support teachers in implementing the sexuality education content, where I train teachers and My role is to support teachers in implementing the sexuality education content, where I train teachers on the content, support their teachings, and guide schools in promoting healthy, inclusive, and welcoming environments for all students. As mentioned at the beginning, sexuality is more than what our adult brains think. It's not just about sex. Your kids are not talking about it when they hear sexuality. Sexuality is a core aspect of each person's identity, interpersonal relationships, personal fulfillment, and well-being. So really, it's about what we feel, what we think, and what we experience in our bodies and our relationships, and how we are affected by our surroundings, like the environment. So sexuality is made up of many different components. Here is the wheel of sexuality that encompasses so much. Throughout our lives, our understandings of sexuality is ever changing, and it's unique to each one of us. So here you see values, relationships, sex, sexual orientation, gender expression, and so on and so forth. The most important part about sexuality is that it is self-defined. People talk and understand their own sexuality by what makes sense to them. There has been an evolution of sexuality education in which the visions and goals for children and young people changed over the years. And still, there are different views that may exist in our society. That being said, sexuality education does not only focus on raising students' awareness of the problems associated with sexuality, like sexual violence, unplanned pregnancies, sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections, and so on and so forth. Not to say that they should be minimized, but sexuality should be presented as a source of well-being and self-fulfillment, which goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning, that sexuality should be about what we feel, what we think, and experience in our bodies, in our relationships, and our environment. Sexuality education in Quebec takes on a comprehensive view of sexuality, and approaching it is as a set of dimensions that are expressed and experienced in different ways, depending on the person's age and development. Sexuality plays a positive role in our lives. It's a source of fulfillment, pleasure, encounters, and appreciation of our lives. The way we see as adults, how we see things is based on who we are, our feelings, our values, our culture, and our experiences. So when we think about sexuality education in schools, we often think about the following misconception: that it will encourage our kids to be sexually active at very young ages, that it's only necessary for older children, that it's only for girls to talk about their menstruation cycles, encourages homosexuality, and it's only about sex. It is, however, important to think beyond our perceptions and biases. We all know that many subjects related to sexuality are still taboo, but other aspects are discussed by students based on their opinions. We do want our kids to develop reliable, valuable knowledge about these topics so that they can develop their own critical thinking and validation reflexes about what they hear, what they see about sexuality. So it's important that parents and caregivers create the spaces for our kids to talk about their concerns, ask questions, so that they can grow in their own sexuality. When we focus on these positive aspects like equality between men and women or mutuality, it allows young people to differentiate the behaviors and attitudes that promote these positive experiences. At the same time, preventing problems such as sexual violence. In the sexuality education content, there are 6 themes in elementary and 7 themes in secondary. All of the themes can be found in various grade levels, which are chosen by experts that are age appropriate and developed based on a child's psychosexual development. Here is one of the themes: sexual growth and body image. It's learning about body parts, including our private parts, which helps children to express themselves if inappropriate touching occurs. This is sexuality education. Next is identity, gender stereotypes and roles and social norms, which allows students to learn about gender roles and stereotypes. With this, students learn different ways of being and expressing themselves. This is also sexuality education. Next, emotional and romantic life. It explores relationships, on mutuality, on equality, which also allows students to express their feelings, to find themselves, develop healthy relationships, and how to manage any conflicts that they may encounter. This is sexuality education. This theme is sexual assault, where students learn safety rules, which can help them recognize different situations of sexual assault, as well as what to do. This is sexuality education. In secondary school, we have also sexual violence, which is understanding their own position of the notion of consent and learning how to help themselves or help others if they need. This is sexuality education, as well as, which is added in secondary school, which is sexual behavior, which is allowing students to become aware of what influences sexual behaviors. So how to allow them to make informed choices, to understand how people are in relationships. So this is sexuality education. The pregnancy and birth is a theme that gives children accurate knowledge about how a baby is born and how they grow inside of the womb. So this is in the elementary level. And then in secondary, we talk about sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections in pregnancy, which is giving the students knowledge of the risks in sexual activity. So these are all sexuality education. The last theme, which is comprehensive view of sexuality, which is learning about your mind, body, and heart, which helps to develop an understanding of all the dimensions of sexuality. This is sexuality education. I would like to share some important information on some Canadian statistics. In 2019, the Canadian Pediatric Society surveyed parents, and 87% said they believed that sexuality education should be taught in schools, and 72% of those who said it should be in elementary school. Another survey in 2020 from the Canadian Women's Foundation said 63% of parents never spoke to their kids about consent. We see most parents agree and support these teachings in school, but do not feel comfortable talking with their own kids. As I mentioned, I am a parent, and sometimes we need to have difficult and sometimes awkward conversations with our kids. And I feel that it is fear that holds us back most of the time. But if we just start talking, it can help. When we start these conversations, and I say conversations because it's not just one talk or the talk, it is a continuous conversation because, as we know, sexuality is ever changing. We start to learn about it at birth, and it continues until we die. We want to make sure that when we do start talking, that we are using proper terms. Example, we say head and shoulders. We use penis, vulva, keeping it simple, right? People have different bodies. Males and females have different parts, and they're used to make babies. Use everyday situations. So if you're talking with your young children, maybe using bath time is a way to talk about private parts or when they're getting changed. Be open to questions. Kids are curious. They are curious and they want to know answers. So if we answer them honestly, that will be easier for you later on. And also, if we don't answer them, they'll find their own answers somewhere else, like the internet. And we want to be able to set boundaries. So be clear on what you think or what you know as appropriate and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate when it comes to certain touches. And keep the conversation going. It's not a one-time conversation. As our kids are growing and maturing and have influenced their friends and peers, and so do their bodies. Once we start listening and being open with our kids, they will feel that they can come to you about anything. And from experience, sometimes I cannot believe some of the things that my own kids tell me, but I'd rather that. As they get older and conversations and topics get more mature, they'll come to you when they need that guidance for more difficult decisions in their life. So another statistic, in 2018, the Canadian Institute for Health Information shared that there was the lowest teenage birth rate among teens 15 to 19 years old. However, this is great. We still need to make sure that our kids have the tools and knowledge to make informed choices. This can start by having those difficult and sometimes awkward conversations when they are young. And who knows if this will help them. Whether we are discussing pregnancy or other topics, we want to make sure that we're there. We want to make sure that we're available. We want to be able to use language that they're understanding. We want to use language that is not necessarily slang, so we don't want to confuse them. In schools, we use proper terms, the scientific terms. So if we can both do the same thing at home and at school, that would make it a lot easier. And be honest about experiences and feelings. If you feel awkward or if you feel that it's embarrassing you, it's okay to say it. Make time to have these conversations, right? Whether it's driving to a hockey practice or a gymnastics competition, take the time and do it. And listen to their questions and concerns. It may make you feel awkward, but if they're asking, it's because they want to know answers. Statistics Canada provides us with statistics from 2018, where they say 1 in 3 women and 1 in 8 men have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. What's interesting is that only 5% of cases are actually reported. And this number could be very different if we would educate our kids about creating boundaries and talking about consent. Another thing, in 2019, the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity did a survey and said that 25% of LGBTQ plus Canadians have experienced sexual assault, in comparison to 18% of heterosexual Canadians who have been sexually assaulted. Again, with education, I think that this can be changed and we can have a brighter future for our children. As parents and caregivers, we would like to put our kids in a bubble sometimes so that they don't have to experience anything bad. With the tools and knowledge that we can give them, it can allow us to remove this bubble and hope that their comprehension of the conversations that we have will make them have more positive experiences than negative experiences. The younger our children are when we start these conversations, the easier it will be to have those tough conversations later on. Talking to your little ones about their body, using appropriate language, and allowing them to set boundaries will start your kids in the right direction of learning how to protect themselves, right? Learning how to say no, learning that it's okay to say no, and when to go speak to an adult, a trusted adult that they know is going to listen to them. Discussing the content. So if we want to talk to our children, young children, about consent and boundaries, you could read a book. There's a really great one of my favorite books, Don't Hug Doug, or watch videos together. Amaze.org have some really great videos explaining about consent and boundaries. Or you could role play with your child. I know it may sound silly, but it could be very helpful. And just to give them that confidence, it's important to let our kids know and praise them when they come up and ask a question. That's being brave. It took a lot for them to come up and ask questions of things that they may have heard, something they may have seen. Maybe they saw an inappropriate image or picture online while they were, with a friend or whatever. I think it's really important that we praise them, and it'll give them that confidence to be able to speak to us and have those conversations, and sometimes difficult conversations. So sexuality is important. It can only be successful if we focus on guiding and supporting our kids to feel, think, and experience about their bodies, their relationships, and their environment. I'd like to thank you for being here, and remember that you have the power to help your child navigate their sexuality. Start having those conversations and help your child think and be whoever they want to be. Thank you.
A big thank you goes out to all the ParentCon speakers, educational partners, and behind-the-scenes organizers. Your commitment to excellence in education is outstanding, and thank you for taking the time to attend this session. We hope you found this session valuable, educational, insightful. For more resources, don't forget to visit the EMSB Parents Committee on Facebook or online at emsbparents.ca.